The Christ Letters, Narration and Text. Letter 1.12, Leaving the Desert. When the Father consciousness within me began to dim, and I gradually returned to human consciousness, I became aware of a gnawing hunger and also a return of my human conditioning and thought. My reactions to my 6 weeks' experiences began to change. My usual human awareness of me and my desires took over my thoughts. Why, the most amazing and completely unexpected thing has happened to me, I exulted. I have been given knowledge beyond any yet given to any other man. I was jubilant with the realization that at last my doubt and rebelliousness against the avenging God of the traditional Orthodox Jews was vindicated. I had been right after all. Who had ever suspected the human mind could be so highly creative that a strongly held thought or desire would actually manifest itself in the visible realm? I realized that Moses must have known something of this, because he had accomplished some strange things when the Israelites were in dire need. He became a leader and changed the course of the Israelites previously enslaved in Egypt. I could return now and free my people from the rigid control of their own teachers. My hunger pains now became intense. It occurred to me that I could turn stones into bread to satisfy my longing for food, because I remembered that the Father creative power worked through my mind, and therefore everything in the universe would be subject to my command. I was about to speak the word which would change stones into bread, but something in me halted me abruptly. It came to me strongly that the Father creative consciousness was perfect protection, nourishment, fulfillment of need, and so the hunger would be taken care of if I asked the Father for relief. I realized that if the little I, the human me, in my need, used the creative power for selfish reasons, I would be erecting a barrier between the Father creative consciousness and myself, and everything I had just learnt might well be taken away from me. This frightened me, and swiftly I asked the Father creative power for new strength to carry me back to habitations and Nazareth again. I also asked for relief of hunger in the form that would be right for me. Immediately the hunger pangs subsided, and I felt a surge of energy flow through my entire body. Thus I proved that all I had seen, heard, and understood was reality, and not some vain imagining born of my time in the desert, fasting and alone. My new energy enabled me to make haste over the rough tracks on my way out of the desert. On the way I met a well-dressed man of sweet and pleasing countenance. He greeted me warmly, expressing concern on seeing my rough, unkempt appearance and loss of condition. Gladly he sat me down on a rock and shared his excellent meat and bread with me. I wondered why he was in such a desolate place and where he had come from. In response to my questioning, he only smiled and seemed not the least surprised when I said I had been in the desert for so many days I had lost count of time. I explained how I was enlightened as to the true nature of the Creator of the world and shown the natural laws of existence. He only smiled and nodded. I am going back to my people to teach them everything I have learnt, I said joyously. Why, I will be able to heal them and bring them release from every sickness and trouble. The stranger replied sadly, "It will take many millennia." I was about to rebuke his lack of faith when I realized he was gone. I knew then that a divine messenger had come to succor with good bread and meat, and compassionately give me warning that I might not find my mission so simple, despite my enthusiasm. I was deflated by his word of warning. My enthusiasm waned. The way to the first village on my road seemed endless. How a change in human thought produces a change of mood. It came to me that I could further prove the truth of all I had been shown by jumping over the edge of a precipice, which would greatly shorten my journey. As I was about to do this, it came to me forcibly that I was trying to prove my time of enlightenment was real. If I required such proof, then I was in a state of doubt, and I would probably kill myself. Besides, I had been shown that in every eventuality I could lift my thoughts up to the Father creative consciousness and ask for a solution to every problem. How quickly I forgot the truth. So I prayed, passionately asking forgiveness for being weak enough to indulge my own fantasies and seeking my own way of doing things. Again, the answer came in renewed strength and a greater sureness of foot as I scrambled over the rough ground. I found, too, that I was covering long distances so quickly that it seemed that I had stepped outside normal time reckoning, and I was in a lighter dimension where human experience was lifted above its heavy thraldom of exhausting expenditure of energy. Walking was so easy, it was now invigorating. I exulted in the fact that I had found the key to more abundant life. A while later, feeling so much at ease, my mind began to wander, and I thought about my meeting with the stranger and the kindness he had shown me. But I also remembered his warning, and again my old nature reasserted itself, and I felt deeply rebellious that he should presume to tell me how my work would go. I decided he knew nothing about my future and set his warning aside. Why, I thought, with my knowledge, I could accomplish things no man has ever done before. Instead of struggling in a difficult life, I could begin to accumulate wealth easily, attract followers wherever I went, and share my knowledge with them to make their lives easier also. I could take away all pain and suffering. As I contemplated the many places I could visit so easily, I felt myself skimming the surface of the ground and rising until I reached the highest peak of a steep mountain overlooking the countryside below. There it was, all laid out before me. I felt my previous enthusiasm return. Why, it would be so simple to round up the people and share all my knowledge with them. I would become powerful, even famous as the man who rescued mankind from all their sickness and troubles. I would gain their admiration and respect, and would no longer be remembered as an idle, worthless fellow. With a tremendous shock, all I had been taught so recently, but a few hours ago, returned to my mind with great force and clarity. Had I not been taught that the only way I could ever prosper was to abandon my self-will and turn to the Father for assistance in everything I undertook? Then I remembered that creation had its own special purposes to fulfill. The individualizing process had created the pull and push, the give and take in human behavior. Although these human characteristics caused people great anguish in their lives, was it not the anguish which forced them to seek better ways to live in order to find true happiness? I realized that the ills of mankind had their place in the human scheme of existence. Was it right for me to bring privileged information to people in order to nullify the effects of the individualizing process? I realized I had been thinking from the central point of my individuality, the ego, and it was the ego drive which built barriers between mankind and Father creative consciousness. Therefore, my central point of human desiring would have to be conquered if I was to live in perfect harmony with my Father, as was my sincere intention. And so I continued on my way, pondering what might lie ahead and how I might best overcome the impulses governing my humanhood in order to remain in the flow of Father consciousness, from which I would draw inspiration, guidance, answers to problems, my daily nourishment, daily health, daily protection. In fact, I realized that whilst I remained within this daily flow of Father consciousness, no harm could ever come near me, and my every need would be met. And more importantly, the Father consciousness working through me would do whatever was required for people in dire need of healing and comfort. At all times, I must overcome my rebelliousness against the harsh realities of existence and listen to the inner voice and conform to the higher will of the Father. This higher will was perfect love, directed entirely at promoting my highest good. It would be extremely foolish, I realized, to continue along the path of self-will which had dictated my behavior to that time. It was then that I was inspired to speak in parables to the people. Those who were ready to receive the knowledge would understand and make good use of it. But, as it turned out, even my disciples could not rid themselves sufficiently of Jewish doctrine to enable them to understand either the principle of consciousness or the activity of the divine creative power within creation. Until this time, it has remained a mystery to all except the spiritually enlightened. Even the spiritual words of enlightenment cannot be immediately fully comprehended by the human mind. Therefore, these letters must be read slowly and accompanied by much meditation and prayer to be properly understood.